will realize that sometimes I will show pictures of these ossicles and these parts of the ear, and they will look different because there's lots of different views. So this is a right ear, right, looking from the front. Here's obviously the outside world here. Here's the inside of the cranial cavity. Okay, so here they are again, articulated. The malleus up here, the hammer, attaching to the incus, which is sort of an anvil, and then it has this long process that attaches to the stapes. Like I say, the stapes sits in an opening in the inner ear. Okay, the malleus has a bunch of named parts. The head, so this is the part that's attaching to this convex ball-like structure, which articulates with this concave part of the incus. A lateral process out here, an anterior process coming forward, and then this handle, this long part coming down here. So the incus is the second one in the chain. So it has this big part, which is the body, with a sort of a bump behind, the short crus, and then this long process that extends inferiorly and articulates with the stapes, which has its own parts, a head, which articulates with the incus, these two sort of loopy things, the anterior and posterior leg, posterior crus, and then the base or foot plate, which I said fits into an opening in the inner ear to transmit the vibrations of the tympanic membrane into vibrations against the fluids in the inner ear. So it transmits the external vibrations to vibrations of fluids, which are picked up by little hairs on the cochlea. Okay. Obviously, I would assume that it's pretty clear that these bones aren't just hanging loose in there, right? So each of these joints has various little ligaments sort of keeping the bones in place. They're obviously allowed to move and vibrate. And here's the long handle of the malleus, which is attached to the tympanic membrane here, and then vibrations here are translated into vibrations there, which are translated into vibrations there. So each of these joints obviously has a name, and these ligaments keep these bones tied together so that they work the way they should. There are little muscles attached to some of these ear ossicles. You've heard these names and seen reference to them before. Here's the tendon of tensor tympani, okay, which attaches to this lateral process of the malleus. Tensor tympani begins with the word tensor, and according to Stern's rule, it's innervated by V3, the mandibular part of the trigeminal nerve, and it originates in the sort of side of the eustachian tube. And then there's another little bitty, very little bitty muscle called the stapedius, which attaches to the head of the stapes, hence the name, innervated by the facial nerve, and it originates in an area known as the pyramidal eminence, right up here in this pyramidal process of the temporal bone. What these do is, if the tympanic membrane is vibrating with wild oscillations, say you're in the front row of a rock concert or next to a cannon going off or a fireworks show, huge blasts of air are going to force this tympanic membrane into very high amplitudes, so much so that it could rip these things apart. So these little muscles can dampen the amount of movement by this part of the malleus, and ultimately, and the stapedius does the same thing. It limits the amount of movement that the stapes may have to keep these things from basically being ripped apart by loud noises and high amplitudes. The little these are among the smallest muscles, striated muscles, anywhere in your body. So they're tiny little guys. Here's the little tensor tympani. Here's the eustachian tube coming in here, and there's the little tensor tympani lying in there. Okay, so we've got sound coming in from the outside, vibrating tympanic membrane. These vibrations being transmitted through this series of ear ossicles to these openings. And this is the inner ear, this part here. There's the semicircular canals, which are concerned with balance. And then there's the cochlea, which is concerned with hearing. It sort of looks like a big snail, or a little snail, I guess. There are two openings facing laterally in these. There's a round window here, and then there's an oval window up top. So the stapes, this foot plate of the stapes, lies up against the oval window. And so what it does is the vibrations here get transmitted here and end up from the stapes sort of going in and out, and then sending the air vibrations out here, transmitting them into vibrations from the fluids that are in the cochlea. So these vibrations get transmitted in here and go up through this where they're picked up by part of the 8th cranial nerve. So here's another schematic a couple of schematic drawings. So these are the semicircular canals. This part of the inner ear is concerned with balance. And you'll notice these canals are sort of set at right angles to one another. So there's a posterior loop here, a lateral loop that's more or less horizontal, and then an anterior loop that's sort of vertical. So as you move in one direction or the other, the sensors within these semicircular canals sort of pick up any accelerations in different directions, which enables you to determine which direction you're moving in, where at least your head is relative to gravity. And then there's the cochlea, which loops around in here, and that's concerned with hearing. Like I said, there are these two openings, a little round window here and an oval window there. And that oval window is where the stapes sits. Okay, here's the 8th cranial nerve, right? The vestibulocochlear nerve. It's got a dual name because it basically is two parts glued together. There's the cochlear part, which is concerned with the cochlea and hearing. So it's going to send nervous stuff up in there that measures the pitch of sounds coming in. And then there's the vestibular part, which goes out here to the semicircular canals and this large area here, which is concerned with balance and movement, orientation. This structure is sort of it's an odd thing, because actually these canals and these tubes of the cochlea are actually openings within the petrous portion of the temporal bone. So this is a solid bone, but the inner ear is actually things that are essentially carved out of this bone around them. So the structures that are in there, the nervous structures and the linings here, are within a fairly solid bone, that petrous bone, that solid bone there. Whereas the ossicles are, individual little bones in a hole. Okay, so the nerves. Okay, there will be several of these. So here is the internal acoustic meatus. All right, here's the brain back here. And coming out are cranial nerves number 7, up here, facial nerve, and number 8, the vestibulocochlear nerve. So the facial nerve, which does lots and lots of things, and you've seen some of this before in the context of the nerve itself. So it comes into this petrous portion of the temporal bone, has a geniculate ganglion, which means geniculate means sort of knee. So this is the genu, the knee. It changes direction, gives off a greater petrosal nerve here, which is going to hit forward. Okay, then it bends, and then the rest of the facial nerve comes down, 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 comes out of the stylomastoid foramen on the underside of the skull, and goes into the parotid gland and out throughout the face. As it goes through this tube down here, it gives off this little branch, the chorda tympani, which comes back up passes between these ear ossicles, right? So there's the malleus, there's the incus, the chorda tympani comes right through the middle ear here. Okay, there's your little tensor tympani there. And then it travels, as you know, goes down, joins the lingual nerve, where it carries taste to the anterior 2/3 of the tongue, and also some parasympathetics that are going to those salivary glands. So in today's dissection, when you sort of knock the top off of the middle ear, if you can find the ear ossicles, you should be able to find the chorda tympani looping up right between the malleus and the incus. Okay, so that's sort of the overview of the ear, sort of how it works, what structures you hopefully or maybe will be able to. I don't want a fire drill. Real quickly, today. Okay, who'd you guys pay to cause a fire alarm so you don't have a quiz? That's what I want. Okay, today's dissection. You will chisel into the middle and inner ear, into that petrous portion of the temporal bone, right where the nerves go in. And then you'll sort of chip away whatever you can see, hopefully find the genu, where the facial nerve ends. If you work your way, you should be able to see the middle ear cavity and find the ear ossicles. It is, as I've said several times, this is sort of a hit or miss thing. So do both sides, see what you can find, and if you end up with a bust or you know it just looks like garbage, there's 10 other cadavers in the room. So look around. I'm sure some of these will yield beautiful. Every cut might show a slightly different part of the middle or inner ear, different parts of the facial nerve or the vestibulocochlear. So it's fairly short, but get the instructors to help you, and we'll find some. Okay, moving right along. Okay, so here's a picture. This is the area we're going to be working. Right here, here's the petrous portion of the temporal bone there. There's the internal acoustic meatus. Blow up. That's the picture we just saw. So if this one just sort of chipped the top off, right? So you see the cochlear part of the 8th cranial nerve going into this, it looks like a snail shell cut in half, and the vestibular part going over to these semicircular canals. And then here's the facial nerve getting down. There's your chorda tympani. There's the genu. I'm sorry, that's the greater petrosal. Then the facial nerve's coming down here with the chorda tympani flipping back and going through the middle ear. Okay, we'll just keep on like this. So again, the same thing, the two parts of the vestibulocochlear nerve. Oh, come on. Here, is that where I'm going? I can't see from here. Okay, good. So that's what we just saw. There's, again, the same thing, showing the branches of the facial nerve. More of the same. More of the same. So that's the cochlear part, obviously, and the semicircular canals of the vestibule and semicircular canals. Okay. So that's today's dissection. Once again, the schedule for the rest of the week. Today's ear day, and you will have a quiz within minutes. The lower limb. Okay, so I've dissected a hip region, back of the knee, and back of the calf, and then Dr. Fernandez has dissected a foot. And then on table number 1, I dissected the front part of the thigh. And I put in, I think, about 20 pins, maybe 25, something like that. And next to those dissections, there will be little cards that will say red pin, sciatic nerve, pink pin, gluteus maximus, yellow pin, I don't know, gluteus medius, and so forth. So, Somebody may be able to help you with it, but if they can't, it can be self-study. So there's cards telling you what these pins are, and some of those features will be on the exam. Okay, they're all labeled. I discussed them all in the lecture of the lower limb. There'll be, one or two. All those pins will be pulled except for maybe one or two, and you'll be asked to know what it is. We're not going to pull out the pins and put them somewhere else just to trick you. So those are the 20 IDs or whatever that you're responsible for, and we'll do the same thing for the earlier upper limb dissection. A fixed number of pins that have been ID'd already, and you can either ask someone to go over it with you, or you can do it on your own time. Okay.
Are you keeping the pins there?
I'm sorry?
Are you going to keep the pins there?
Yes. Yes, as far as they will stay there until we pull some of them out to fix the exam. Okay. Okay, tomorrow. There was supposed to be a lecture on fascial planes of the face, neck and head. What I've decided to do instead is do a somewhat superficial review lecture. Needless to say, it would be very difficult to review all the stuff we've covered in the course. But I'm going to try to just pull out selected slides to go over and remind you of the various things that you've seen to jog your memory. So in case you say, "Oh my God, I forgot about the lungs," or "Gee, did we actually look at the spleen?" So I'm not going to go over in detail all of it. That would be hundreds and hundreds of slides. But I'm just going to sort of blast through the parts of the body that we've talked about before, just to jog your memory. Oh, gee, yeah, what's that? There will be a practice lab quiz at the beginning of lab tomorrow afternoon, and we would ask you to fill it out and return it. Friday is an open review. We will put some more pins in there. I'm thoroughly convinced that practice identifying these pins is the only way to learn this material. That will be an opener. We'll just have stuff pinned, and you can walk and labeled, and you can go around and look at it on your own. We're not going to grade it like that. We're going to look at it. We're not going to correct it, shall we say, as we're going to do the one tomorrow. Saturday, the lab will be, the lab is obviously open 24 hours a day, but Dr. Fernandez will be there between 2 and 5 to answer your questions.
Attention. Your attention, please. The building